I decided once I found the letter that accidentally told me where the real statues representing each prince were possibly located, I was going after them. I haven't decided if I'm going to open the door. I don't even know if this is real, but if I can find at least one statue, I might be able to finally figure out what is going on. Before starting my search, I decided I needed to tie up some loose ends. According to this mysterious letter I found, the previous owner's family sounds like they needed to be taken care of. I needed them to think I didn't know anything so they'd go away. So that's what I did, since I saw the previous owner's name on the invoice. I looked him up on Facebook. It wasn't set to private, so I saw a few messages on his wall lamenting his apparent death. I thought to myself that was sad. Not only did his own family probably kill him, but it would have been nice to converse with him somehow. I decided I needed to tread carefully. These sounded like dangerous people. I messaged someone who had the same last name as him who looked similar. Thinking it might be a brother, I made up some bullshit to try and start the conversation. Here's what I sent him. Hi there, you don't know me and this might seem kind of weird, but I recently bought a storage locker at an auction that hadn't been paid for. The reason I'm messaging you is that the company let it slip when I was signing the paperwork about who had it previously. And the name was, is he a relation? The thing is, I bought it hoping to make some money selling the contents, and to be honest, there was virtually nothing in there. I've decided that since profit looks to be extremely minimal, I thought I'd offer that if you or anyone in your family wanted to go through anything before it gets thrown out or sold, we could meet there sometime. I do plan on keeping this unit for my own purposes, so I'll be looking to move this stuff out soon. There are 3 very nice looking statues in particular I found in there that I'd hate to sell off if they were actually someone's family heirlooms or anything. Thank you. Within about 20 minutes I had a reply. It was indeed his brother and he sounded ecstatic about my offer. We met there the next day. He brought who he said was his cousin with him. I do have a CCW, so I came packing just in case, since I sure as hell didn't trust them. But the way their eyes lit up when they saw the statues showed me that's all they cared about. I told them about the clothes as well and lied about nothing being in the pockets. They lied too, about missing their granddad's old pocket watch, and checked the pockets themselves just in case. I then showed them the box with all the notes. Now I did look through here, so I apologize if this is some kind of personal family business. I didn't really understand anything in here, so I only looked at a couple of these notes before I put them back. They looked overjoyed at seeing the box of notes and didn't seem to hear me when I said I looked through it. Feel free to go through the boxes as well. Mostly just magazines. They did and didn't want anything. They then looked at the door. Not sure what that's doing here, but it's locked anyway. I'll probably just use a crowbar to get it off. They pretended to act confused themselves. In the end, all they wanted were the statues and the notes. They thanked me again and seemed very grateful. They said the statues had been in their family for generations and it would have been devastating to lose them. We went our separate ways after that, with the family hopefully out of the way. The next step was to start looking for the real statues. I would start at the guy's house since he said one was buried there. I said before it had been in foreclosure, but that had been moving right along. They were already doing open houses. I decided to go to one of them to scope the place out legitimately. It was a decent house in a nice neighborhood. It was at the end of a dead-end street, which would make sneaking in after dark a little easier. I had to act interested as the realtor took me around, so that was kind of a pain, but I had to keep up the facade. We finally made it to the basement and I could start searching for anything out of the ordinary. The house had been emptied by his family, so there was nothing in the basement either. I peeked around and found what I was looking for. The southwest corner had a few discolored cinder blocks. Was there some repair work over here? I asked the realtor. I believe there were some cracks that were fixed by the previous owner. I told her I was done down here, so she started back upstairs as I slowly walked back myself. Once she was out of sight, I quickly ran to the nearest window, hoping there'd be a latch or it could otherwise be open. Luckily enough, it was able to be opened, so I unlatched it and ran back upstairs. This sneaky business was kind of fun, but at the same time I felt out of my league. I could go to jail for the things I was doing. Anyway, I went back that night with a sledgehammer. I was hoping I'd be able to smash and grab and be out of there before I make too much noise and someone either calls the cops or comes to check themselves. I approached the house from the dead-end side, so hopefully nobody saw me. I sulked around in the darkness until I found the window. It was still unlocked. I slipped in. I barely fit, but I did. I proceeded to the corner I noticed before, wound up as much as I could, and gave as hard of a whack as I could. It sounded like an explosion to me, but I don't think outside the house it was that loud. I hit it one more time and the wall gave out. A hole appeared, revealing a hollowed out portion of the wall. I reached in and felt something inside, so I pulled it out. It was something heavy wrapped in some kind of cloth. Rather than investigate there, I decided this has to be it. So I climbed back out and made my way back to my car parked a few blocks over. As far as I could tell, I appeared to have not been noticed. I quickly drove away. I pulled into a Kroger and parked away from all the other cars underneath a light. I removed the wrapping to see what I had. Now realizing there could have been multiple things in the hole, so hopefully I grabbed the right one. As I pulled away the cloth, I realized quickly I had the right thing, whatever it was. It was the red one. Once I unwrapped it completely, it was obvious who it was. Leviathan. It was just slightly larger than the fake statues. But the serpent was clearly visible. It looked like a cross between an eel and a dragon. The neck was curved in an S shape and there were several smaller snakes or serpents at various heights going down to the base, like they were slithering upwards towards their master. Despite potentially being thousands of years old, it didn't contain a single scratch or blemish. It wasn't just the sight of the statue, or prints I guess, that led me to believe this was as real as it got. I thought that I could almost feel the evil emanating from it, despite being essentially a giant rock. I felt like the power of the object I was holding was truly awesome. Like I was unworthy to be even holding such an artifact. How could that family not realize what they had was fake? I wrapped it back up and drove away. I placed it in the most secure place I had, my stand-up gun safe. It was fireproof and fairly heavy duty. I didn't think anybody would be able to crack it outside of an expert safe cracker or locksmith. I was starting to get paranoid as well. I felt like the family somehow would know I have it, or that the realtor would do a showing and find the basement damage and know it was me since I asked about it and call the cops. I told myself I hadn't even given her my name, and at least 50 people went through that house besides me. I began to calm myself down. I tried to go to sleep, but I didn't sleep well. All I could picture were snakes and water. I had a dream about a massive, giant tidal wave washing over the beach I was visiting as a kid. I dreamed there was a cobra in my basement, and when I went to shoot it, my magazine was empty. And I dreamed the kraken had taken over the small lake in the city park nearby. The next morning I came to the conclusion it must be the statue. I decided if I was going to continue, I needed to finish quickly. My next stop was going to be the cemetery. Potentially both the other statues were there in or near the family mausoleum. I looked up the previous owner and found his obituary. He was definitely dead. I looked a little further and found the name of the cemetery. I decided I needed to tread very carefully. Even though I'm not superstitious, disrespecting or disturbing the dead was not something I wanted to do. I decided to go during the day. Graveyards at night were not my thing, even if there was potential to find valuable artifacts. I figured since the cemetery was on the outskirts of town that there probably wouldn't be much traffic right in the middle of the day. I was right. I only saw one other vehicle there when I pulled in. It took me about 25 minutes to find the mausoleum for this family. The cemetery was larger than I thought. I parked away from it a little bit and made my way over. The mausoleum was fairly large, about the size of a garage. This family must have money. Sheesh. Anyway, I walked up to the double door and it had a large padlock on it. They must not want people screwing around inside. Suddenly, I realized the family could show up at any minute, so I acted quickly. I pulled out the hell key and noticed the teeth were different again. I stuck it in the lock and it fit. I then turned it and it worked. Wow, whatever happens in the end, I am definitely keeping this key. I entered the mausoleum and closed the door behind me. It was one room and there were many stone coffins. Or at least they looked like coffins, about the floor. They all had names across them. On the east side of the room there were many urns in front of a stained glass window. I started checking names, looking for Win. None of the coffins had this name on it, which was fine with me. I had a terrible thought that what if he was buried with it by a fellow family saboteur? I was not about to open a casket and find a skeleton, prince or not. I move over to the urns next. They all have nameplates below them. There were probably about 25 urns in total of varying size. Some were small while others were huge. I found a medium-sized urn with Win written on the nameplate. I think to myself, there must be a clue here somewhere. I carefully picked up the urn to see if anything was underneath it. It seemed heavy. I suddenly had a thought. I picked up another urn nearby of similar size and it felt substantially lighter. I think to myself, shit, I bet the statue is buried in his ashes, probably by a family saboteur. I carefully removed the top of Win's urn. It's filled, I'd guess about 80% full with his ashes. I wish I would have brought gloves. I slowly dipped my hand into the urn, feeling absolutely disgusted with myself, and felt around. I got a little past my wrist when I feel something. I slowly, and I mean slowly, began to pull it out. I didn't want one speck of ash to fall out of the urn. The more I got out, the more I could tell this was another statue. Once it was completely out, I held it just above the ash line and carefully wipe it off so any remaining ash on the statue falls into the urn. I then sat it down carefully and tried my absolute best to get every piece of ash off my hand by running them over the urn. As far as I could tell, I didn't spill any. I replaced the urn and apologized to Win. I then left the mausoleum and locked the padlock. Concealing the statue under my jacket, I quickly made my way back to my car. I locked the doors and inspected what I had. This was Asmodeus for sure. What was most surprising was that the statue was blue. Like a dull cerulean maybe. I was expecting either black or white based on the fakes, but then realized they were fake. The real ones could be any color. The statue itself was bizarre. It was a naked man standing off-center. It kind of looked like the statue of David, almost from about the knees up. Below the knees disappeared into the base, like Leviathan. This one also had things reaching up towards Asmodeus. This time they were women. There were 3 women reach up towards him kind of in a triangle, holding onto his legs. Only their shoulders and above were visible. Asmodeus himself appeared to be holding a bushel of grapes. The strangest thing though was his penis. It was erect like he had a boner. Again, I had strange sensations simply holding the statue. I suddenly got horny. Like I wanted to whack off right then and there. I wanted to find a prostitute somewhere and bang her. Hell, I wanted to bang the next woman I saw. I didn't even care if she was the ugliest woman I had ever seen. I quickly put it in my trunk and locked the lever in my car so it couldn't be opened even if someone broke into my car. After a few minutes, my boner went down and I started feeling normal again. I would definitely not touch that statue for any longer than I had to. I then drove around looking for a disused crypt. It took a while, but on the other side of the cemetery I found something that could be it. I got out and approached it. The door wasn't locked and it was almost completely off the hinges. There were a lot of cats in and around the entrance as well. This had to be it. I shooed the cats from the entrance and walked in. It was one room and there was nothing in it. Everything was painted black. Leaves from outside had blown in and there was so much dirt on the floor it almost seemed like it had a dirt floor originally. I needed my phone flashlight since there were no windows and it was pretty dark. I was looking for something out of place. I went to the back of the room and noticed part of the wall looked different. I went up to it to inspect. There had to have been 200 cats in this crypt and they were getting annoying. I inspected the wall and found there was a small part of it made of wood. I realized this was the entrance to the basement. Someone had placed a makeshift door without a handle in the open doorway and painted it to look like old cinder blocks. From the entrance you probably wouldn't have been able to notice. And the 10 million cats that seemed to have multiplied would be more than enough to prevent a normal person from even coming in. I pushed the door and it fell out of the frame. It hadn't been hinged at all. The stairs were winding and went down about 10 feet. It was absolutely pitch black as I started down. There was dust and spider webs everywhere. The ground was stone, as were the walls. There must have been a well nearby because I could hear water dripping somewhere. I got to the back of the room and found a patch of dirt in the corner. The stone floor had been taken out somehow. This was the only thing out of the ordinary aside from this being the spider capital of the US. It was a good thing I'm not arachnophobic. The only thing I could think of was to dig. I used my hands on the soft dirt and was able to dig down far enough until I touched something hard. About a foot down, I pulled out a box about the size of a shoebox. Rather than inspect it there, I quickly returned to the stairs and said goodbye to all the cats and got back in my car. I drove away from the crypt before I stopped and examined the box. It had a small padlock on it, so guess what I did? I used the hell key again. It changed again and the padlock was off. Looking at the key again, it seemed like the grin was getting bigger. Maybe every time I used it, its power grew. Anyway, I opened the lid and inside was the final statue. It was a giant fly and was the blackest black I'd ever seen. Unlike the others, it did not have any extra details. Even if this was the first one I found, I would have known this was Beelzebub. It was just absolutely grotesque. Just holding it made me want to vomit. I felt weak and short of breath. I wanted to kill something too. I wanted to drive my car into that crypt and run over as many of those cats as I could. I love animals, so I recognized I needed to dump this statue immediately. I put it back in the box and tossed it in my backseat and drove home. Part of me wanted to do the ritual right now and be done with it. But I knew I had to prepare. It was getting late too. I decided to sleep on it and I would do it tomorrow. I knew I could do it at home according to the prophecy since it said any door would do. But I intended to use the door in the storage locker. And where I started, I had the most fucked up dreams of all time that night. I had about 4 or 5 wet dreams consisting of the raunchiest sex imaginable. I dreamed about flies, and snakes, snakes having sex with flies, giant tidal waves that weren't water but consisted of flies instead. It was messed up. I woke up about 5:30 in the morning and decided it was time. The storage unit place opened at 6, so it was perfect. I wasn't even hungry, so I didn't eat breakfast. It was like just having all the statues together in my house was depriving me of energy and life. I went down to retrieve the statues and opened the safe door. Together, all three of them seemed to be emitting an aura. Like their color was much richer and more beautiful since they were together again. I then realized that this might possibly be the first time in recorded history all three were together in the same room, possibly in thousands of years. Even the cult family never had all three of them together despite being in possession of all three of them at one time. I wrapped each one of them in a towel and put them in my car. I drove to the storage facility, suppressing urges to find something to kill or bang. Any chance of me keeping the statues locked away as keepsakes, priceless relics only I have, was gone. Whatever happened, I was not keeping these statues. I had to find a way to get rid of them while also making sure no one ever found them. I got to my locker and shut the door behind me. I approached the TV tray I had set up and set my gym bag down. I knew these were the real statues, the three princes of the Seraphim. I'm sure the order in which I placed them didn't matter. I took Beelzebub out first, this giant, disgusting fly. I set it down on the tray and knelt down to get someone else. I picked up Leviathan and set him down next. I paused for a second because I could have sworn I just heard a noise on the other side of the door. Ready to shit my pants, I leaned closer to the door. I thought I heard what sounded like a light wind coming from the other side of the door. I then jolted back in sheer absolute terror, falling on my ass. Something on the other side of the door whispered softly, "Release us." This is what I expected the first time. The ritual was beginning to work before all three princes were presented. I realized I was too scared to finish, but I had to present Asmodeus. I had to. As long as the door remained shut, nothing would happen. I still needed to use the key after presenting the princes. Slowly, I placed Asmodeus on the table. A dark purple aura then started to flash from the other side of the door and the sound of wind picked up. I heard deep rustling and what sounded like weak groans coming from the other side, but I couldn't be sure. I stepped closer to the door to hear better. I knew I was safe as long as I didn't use the key. I was about a foot from the door when I saw the knob slowly start to turn. I was so scared my eyes started to tear up. I told myself the door won't open since I need to use the key. The knob continued to slowly turn and then I suddenly realized something dreadful. After the initial failure before I knew those statues were fake, I slammed the door shut in my anger, but never relocked it. That shouldn't matter, should it? The key has to be used. I got my answer seconds later. It did matter. The knob turned all the way and the door slowly started to open. I screamed loudly and rushed the door and crashed into it, shutting it. I scrambled for the key in my pocket and somehow got it into the keyhole as the knob started to turn again. I got it locked and whoever or whatever was on the other side seemed to let go. I was sweating profusely out of fear and hyperventilating and I stepped back from the door. That wasn't in the fucking prophecy. I then realized the locked door wasn't just part of the ritual. It was to keep hell out until you were ready. I could still hear something or somethings on the other side. I looked down at the key to hell. The grin was much, much larger than it was before and the inscription was now illuminated with a golden aura. Only in the presence of the three princes of the Seraphim will the way be open. The way was definitely open. I realized I was way out of my league. I'm scared to death. I'm delirious with fear. If I opened the door now, I'd probably end up wishing for a cheeseburger or something equally stupendously stupid. I decided I wasn't about to bring about the end of days for a cheeseburger. I snapped out of it and collected myself. The door was locked. I was definitely okay. I decided I'm just going to pack the statues up and get the hell out of here. I moved towards the TV tray and before I could pick up a statue, my heart skipped about 12 beats. Knock, knock, knock from the other side of the door.